Hello everyone and welcome back to Haunted Hues. I know many of you tune in to these videos as you drift off to sleep, finding comfort in the stories we share. To make our community even more connected, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're listening from. Now let's dive in. It was one of those perfect summer days, you know? The kind where the sun is shining, the birds are singing, and everything feels just right. Mia, Tom, and I decided to take a trip to this serene lake nestled in the mountains. The lake was surrounded by towering pine trees, and as we drove up, I could feel the excitement bubbling inside me. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the water, making it look like something out of a postcard. When we finally arrived, we wasted no time. We threw our stuff down, changed into our swimsuits, and jumped right into the refreshing water. It felt amazing. The cool lake was a perfect escape from the heat. We splashed around, laughing and joking like we were kids again. "Hey, race you to the other side," Tom shouted, and before I could respond, he took off. Mia and I exchanged a glance and then dove in after him. As we swam, I noticed something moving beneath the surface. It was just a flicker, but it caught my eye. "Did you see that?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. Mia looked at me, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "I think I saw something down there," I said, trying to sound casual. "Probably just a fish," Tom laughed, but I could see the worry in Mia's eyes. "Or maybe a log," he added, brushing it off. We continued swimming, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The water felt different, almost electric. I glanced at Mia, who was looking around nervously. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, I don't know. I feel like something's watching us," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I laughed it off, trying to lighten the mood. "Come on, it's just a lake. What could possibly be watching us?" But deep down, I felt a little uneasy too. After a while, we decided to take a break and float on our backs, staring up at the sky. The clouds were painted in shades of pink and orange as the sun dipped lower. It was beautiful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking beneath us. Later that night, we set up a campfire on the shore and roasted marshmallows. The smell of the burning wood mixed with the sweet scent of the marshmallows was heavenly. We were all in high spirits, laughing and sharing stories. But then Mia spoke up again, her voice trembling slightly. "I swear I saw a giant fin out there earlier," she said, her eyes wide. Tom chuckled. "Maybe it was just a log, Mia. You're imagining things." "No, I'm serious. It was huge," she insisted, her voice rising. I could see the fear in her eyes, and it made me uneasy. "Maybe we should just stick to the shallow end tomorrow," I suggested, trying to ease her worries. "Yeah, good idea," Tom said, but I could tell he was just trying to be supportive. As we sat around the fire, I couldn't help but glance at the lake. The water was dark now, reflecting the stars above, but it felt ominous. I kept thinking about what Mia had said. A giant fin? What if she really did see something? After a while, we decided to call it a night. We crawled into our tents, but sleep didn't come easy. Every little sound made me jump, and I kept imagining what could be lurking in the depths of the lake. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of birds chirping and the sun streaming through the trees. I felt a little better, but as I stepped out of the tent, the memory of last night's conversation came flooding back. "Hey, let's go check out the shore," I suggested to Mia and Tom. "Sure," Mia said, but I could see she was still a bit on edge. We walked down to the water, the morning sun glistening off the surface. It looked so peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As we reached the shore, I noticed something strange in the sand. "Guys, look at this," I called out, pointing to a set of footprints. They were big, webbed, and definitely not human. "What the heck?" Tom said, kneeling down to inspect them. Mia gasped, taking a step back. "Those are huge. What made those?" "I don't know, but they lead right into the woods," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. "Maybe it's just some weird animal," Tom suggested, but I could tell he was starting to feel uneasy too. "Yeah, but what kind of animal has webbed feet?" Mia asked, her voice shaking. We stood there for a moment, staring at the footprints, the initial calm of the lake turning sinister. "Let's follow them," I said, trying to sound brave, but my heart was pounding in my chest. "Are you serious?" Mia asked, her eyes wide. "Come on, it'll be an adventure," I said, forcing a smile. Tom shrugged. "I'm in. Let's see where they go." So we started following the footprints, which led us away from the lake and into the dense woods. The trees loomed overhead, casting long shadows on the ground. The further we went, the more the atmosphere changed. It felt like we were stepping into a different world, one that was darker and more mysterious. "Maybe we should turn back," Mia said after a few minutes, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just a little further," I urged, trying to keep my own fear in check. We walked in silence, the only sounds being the crunch of leaves under our feet and the occasional rustle of something in the bushes. I kept glancing around, half expecting to see something leap out at us. After a while, we reached a small clearing. In the center, there was a large rock formation that looked like it had been there for ages. The footprints seemed to disappear near the rocks, and I felt a sense of dread wash over me. "Do you think whatever made those footprints is hiding here?" Tom asked, looking around nervously. "Maybe," I said, my voice shaky. "Let's take a look." We approached the rocks cautiously, and as we got closer, I noticed something glimmering in the sunlight. "What's that?" I asked, pointing. Mia squinted, trying to see. "I don't know. Let's check it out." As we got closer, I realized it was a piece of shiny metal, half buried in the dirt. I bent down to pick it up, and my heart raced as I turned it over. It was a small, rusted piece of what looked like a fishing lure. Why would this be out here? I wondered aloud. Maybe someone lost it? Tom suggested, but I could tell he was just as freaked out as I was. Or maybe it belongs to whatever made those footprints, Mia said, her voice trembling. I glanced around the clearing, feeling a sense of unease creeping in. "Let's head back to the lake," I said, trying to sound calm. "Yeah, good idea," Tom agreed, looking relieved. We turned around and started walking back, but as we retraced our steps, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The woods felt alive, and every rustle sent my heart racing. When we finally reached the lake, the sun was high in the sky, and the water looked inviting. But after what we had just experienced, I felt a knot in my stomach. "Maybe we should just stick to the shore for now," I suggested, glancing at Mia. "Yeah, I'm not feeling too great about swimming right now," she replied, her voice shaky. Tom shrugged. "I'm still going for a swim. You guys can stay here if you want." "Fine, but we're not going far," I said, and Mia nodded in agreement. Tom dove into the water, and I watched as he swam out a little way. Mia and I stayed on the shore, sitting on a log and watching him. "Do you think we should tell him about the footprints?" Mia asked, her voice low. "I don't know," I replied. I don't want to freak him out. Yeah, but what if something happens? She said, her eyes wide with worry. Just then, Tom called out from the water, "Hey, you guys should join me. The water's great." I looked at Mia and we exchanged a glance. "Maybe just for a bit," I said, trying to sound brave. We both stood up and walked to the water's edge, dipping our toes in. Felt nice, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Okay, let's do this," I said, and we both jumped in. The water was refreshing, and for a moment, I forgot about the footprints and the unease. We swam around, splashing each other and laughing. But every time I glanced toward the deeper part of the lake, I felt a shiver run down my spine. "Did you hear that?" Mia suddenly asked, her voice tense. "Hear what?" I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Like a growl or something," she said, looking around nervously. I strained to listen, and sure enough, there it was, a low, rumbling sound coming from somewhere beneath the surface. "What the heck is that?" I whispered, my heart racing. Tom swam closer, oblivious to our growing fear. "Come on, you guys. Stop being wimps." But Mia and I exchanged worried glances. "Maybe we should get out," I suggested, my voice shaking. "Yeah, let's go," Mia agreed, and we both swam back toward the shore. As we climbed out of the water, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just below the surface, watching us. The calmness of the lake felt like a facade, hiding something sinister beneath. We dried off and sat on the shore, trying to shake off the unease. "I think we should leave," Mia said suddenly, her eyes wide. "Leave? But we just got here," Tom protested, still in a good mood. "Yeah, but I don't like this place anymore," Mia insisted. I nodded in agreement. "I think we should go. Something feels off." Tom frowned but eventually relented. "Fine, let's pack up and head out." As we started gathering our things, I couldn't help but glance back at the lake. The water looked calm, but I felt a knot in my stomach. When we finally finished packing, we headed back to the car. The drive back felt long, and the tension in the air was palpable. "I'm never swimming here again," Mia said, breaking the silence. Couldn't blame her. I felt the same way. The lake that had once seemed so inviting now felt like a trap, hiding secrets we weren't meant to uncover. As we drove away, I glanced back at the lake one last time, the sun setting behind it, casting long shadows across the water. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still lurking beneath the surface, waiting for the next unsuspecting swimmer to come along. And I knew, without a doubt, that I'd never return to that lake again. This story captures the eerie experience of encountering the unknown at the lake, filled with suspense and a sense of foreboding. It was a Friday night, and my friends and I were driving home from a party that had gotten a little wild. The kind of party where you laugh too loud, dance too hard, and drink just enough to feel invincible. Alex was behind the wheel, his girlfriend Emily was in the passenger seat, and the rest of us were crammed in the back, trying to catch our breath after a night of fun. The roads were dark and deserted, with only the car's headlights cutting through the night. As we cruised down the lonely rural road, the fields on either side seemed to stretch endlessly into the darkness. We were all buzzing, joking about the night's events, when suddenly, Alex slammed on the brakes. "What the heck is that?" he shouted, his voice breaking the laughter that had filled the car just moments before. We all turned to look out the windshield. There, on the side of the road, was a massive creature. It was hard to make out in the darkness, but it looked like some kind of wolf or dog, only much bigger. Its fur was dark, almost blending into the shadows, but its eyes, those glowing eyes, stood out like headlights. "It looks like a wolf," one of our friends, David, exclaimed, leaning forward in his seat, his excitement mingled with fear. As we got closer, the creature turned its head, revealing those piercing eyes that seemed to glow in the dark. "What the hell is that?" I muttered, my heart racing. "Go, go, go!" Alex yelled, panic creeping into his voice. He slammed the gas pedal, and the car lurched forward, speeding away from the creature as our hearts pounded in our chests. "What the hell was that?" Emily asked, her voice shaking as she clutched the dashboard. "I don't know, but it was huge," Alex replied, his knuckles white from gripping the steering wheel. We drove in silence for a few minutes, the adrenaline slowly wearing off. I could feel my heart still racing, and I couldn't shake the image of those glowing eyes from my mind. "Do you think it followed us?" David asked, glancing nervously out the back window. "I hope not," Alex said, his voice low and tense. As we drove further away from the scene, the tension began to ease. We started to laugh again, trying to brush it off as just a trick of the light or a big dog. But deep down, I knew we had all seen something that wasn't normal. When we finally pulled into Alex's driveway, we all piled out of the car, still buzzing from the experience. "Let's go back and check it out," David suggested, his eyes bright with excitement. "Are you crazy?" Emily exclaimed, her voice rising. "I'm never going near that thing again." The rest of us agreed, shaking our heads. "No way," I said, trying to sound tough. "Let's just call it a night." As we walked into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept replaying the encounter in my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt. The next day, I woke up with the sun streaming through my window. I sat up, rubbing my eyes, and the memory of last night flooded back. I grabbed my phone and started searching for information about the creature we had seen. After a bit of digging, I stumbled upon something that made my stomach drop. There had been reports of a strange creature roaming the area around Bray Road for years. It was known as the Beast of Bray Road, and people described it as a large, wolf-like creature with glowing eyes. Couldn't believe it. We had actually seen the Beast of Bray Road. I called Alex and the others to tell them what I had found, and they were all just as shocked as I was. "So, it was real?" Emily asked, her voice small. "Yeah, it seems like it," I replied, still trying to wrap my head around it. "What do we do?" Alex asked, sounding worried. "Should we tell someone?" David suggested, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. "Who would believe us?" I said. "We're just a bunch of kids who were out partying. No one would take us seriously." We all agreed that we needed to keep it to ourselves, but the experience had changed us all. We were more cautious, always looking over our shoulders when we were out at night, and we never, ever drove down Bray Road again. Days turned into weeks, and life went on, but the memory of that night lingered in the back of my mind. Whenever I heard a strange noise outside or saw a shadow move in the corner of my eye, I would think of those glowing eyes and the massive creature that had sent us speeding away in terror. One night, a few weeks later, I was hanging out at Alex's house again. We were watching a movie, but I couldn't focus. My mind kept drifting back to the Beast of Bray Road. I finally decided to bring it up. "Hey, do you guys remember that creature we saw?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Of course we do," Emily said, rolling her eyes. "How could we forget?" I was thinking, What if we went back? I suggested, half joking. Are you nuts? Alex said, laughing. There's no way I'm going back there. But David looked thoughtful. What if we took some flashlights and went during the day? It might not be as scary. Yeah, right? Emily scoffed. You think it's just going to show up for a picnic? Come on, it could be fun. David insisted. We could prove that it's just a myth. After a bit of back and forth, we finally settled on a plan. We'd go back to Bray Road the next Saturday during the day. I was nervous, but there was a small part of me that was excited too. Saturday rolled around, and we all met at Alex's house. We packed flashlights, snacks, and a couple of cameras, just in case we saw something crazy. As we drove out to Bray Road, the atmosphere in the car was tense. We joked around to lighten the mood, but I could feel the underlying anxiety. When we finally arrived, the road looked just as it had that night, only now it was bathed in sunlight. The fields on either side were green and lush, and the sky was a bright blue. This doesn't look so scary, Alex said, trying to sound brave. Yeah, until it gets dark, Emily replied, crossing her arms. We parked the car and stepped out, the warm sun hitting our faces. I felt a little more at ease, but the memory of those glowing eyes still haunted me. We walked down the road, chatting and laughing, but I kept glancing into the woods, half expecting to see something watching us. The further we walked, the more uneasy I felt. Let's check out that clearing we found last time, David suggested, pointing to a path that led into the woods. Are you sure that's a good idea? Emily asked, her voice laced with concern. Come on, it'll be fun, David said, and before anyone could protest, he started down the path. Reluctantly, we followed him, and soon we found ourselves in the clearing. The sun filtered through the trees, and it was beautiful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Look, there's that rock formation, I said, pointing to the large rocks we had seen before. As we approached the rocks, I noticed something glimmering in the dirt. What's that? I asked, bending down to pick it up. It was a small, rusted piece of metal, half buried in the ground. Looks like an old piece of junk, Alex said, but I felt a chill run down my spine. Maybe it's from the creature, I said, my voice low. Stop it, Emily said, rolling her eyes. You're just trying to scare us. But I couldn't shake the feeling that we were in over our heads. We stood there for a moment, the tension in the air thickening. Let's get out of here, I said, my voice shaky. Yeah, I'm with you, Emily agreed. We turned to leave, but just as we did, we heard a low growl coming from the trees. My heart dropped and I froze. What was that? David whispered, his bravado fading. I don't know, I said, my voice trembling. Let's go, Alex shouted, and we all bolted back toward the path, our hearts racing. As we ran, I glanced back, half expecting to see the creature chasing us. The growl echoed in my ears, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. We burst out of the woods and back onto the road, gasping for breath. What the hell was that? Emily panted, her face pale. I don't know, but we need to get out of here, Alex yelled, and we all jumped into the car. David fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking. Come on, he urged, finally getting the engine to roar to life. We sped down Bray Road, the adrenaline pumping through our veins. The creature's growl still echoed in my mind, and I could feel the fear gripping my heart. Did you see anything? I asked, glancing back at the woods. No, but I heard it, David said, his voice shaky. As we drove away, I could feel the weight of the experience settling over us. We had gone back to face our fears, but instead we had found something we weren't prepared for. When we finally pulled into Alex's driveway, we all sat in silence, the reality of what had just happened sinking in. "I'm never driving that way again," Emily said, breaking the silence. "Agreed," I said, still feeling the fear coursing through me. "Let's just forget about it," Alex suggested, but I knew we couldn't. The beast of Bray Road was real, and we had seen it for ourselves. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting victim. I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep, and I was right. The memory of the glowing eyes and the low growl haunted me, and I knew that Bray Road would forever hold a place in my mind as a reminder of the unknown. And as for the beast of Bray Road, well, I hoped I'd never encounter it again. It was a chilly October night, and the moon hung low, casting eerie shadows across the forest. I had gathered a few friends for a camping trip, hoping to bond over ghost stories and the thrill of the unknown. There's something about the woods at night that gets your heart racing, right? The way the trees sway, the rustling of leaves, and the distant sounds of animals can make even the bravest soul feel a bit uneasy. We drove out to this remote cabin that my buddy Jake's family owned. It was surrounded by dense woods, and the only thing we could hear was the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. When we got there, we unloaded the car, set up our tents, and lit a fire. The flames flickered and danced, casting a warm glow against the cool night air. We roasted marshmallows and shared stories, laughing and joking like we were kids again. But as the night wore on, the laughter faded, and the stories turned darker. That's when Sarah, who was always a bit more sensitive to the spooky stuff, said, "You guys ever heard about the howling beast that roams these woods?" I rolled my eyes, but I could see Jake perk up. "Yeah, I've heard about that. They say it's a creature that howls at night, looking for its next victim." He chuckled, but I could tell he was a little freaked out. "Come on, guys. It's just a story to scare kids," I said, trying to lighten the mood. But deep down, I felt a twinge of unease. The woods felt different tonight, like they were alive, and not in a good way. After a while, we decided to call it a night. We crawled into our tents, but sleep didn't come easy. I kept hearing the wind howling outside, and every little noise made me jump. I finally dozed off, but it wasn't long before I was jolted awake by a sound that made my blood run cold. A blood-curdling howl pierced the night, echoing through the trees. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard before. My heart raced, and I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. "What was that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, trying to sound brave. "Maybe it's just a wolf or something." But even I didn't believe my own words. Jake shrugged, trying to act tough. "Let's go check it out." "Are you serious?" I said, my voice rising. It could be dangerous, but Jake was determined. "Come on, it'll be fun. We can't just sit here and be scared." I glanced at Sarah, who looked just as uneasy as I felt. "I don't know, guys. Maybe we should just stay inside." "No way. I want to see what it is," Jake insisted, and before I could protest any further, he was already unzipping his tent and stepping outside. "Fine," I huffed, following him out. Sarah reluctantly joined us, and we crept into the darkness, the cold air sending chills down my spine. As we stepped outside, the howl echoed again, closer this time. "Let's go back inside," I urged, my voice barely above a whisper. But Jake wasn't listening. "We've got to find out what it is," he said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. We moved cautiously into the trees, the moonlight barely illuminating our path. The darkness felt thick, almost suffocating. Every rustle of leaves made my heart race, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. I nodded, straining to listen. There it was again, a low growl that sent shivers down my spine. "Maybe we should turn back," I suggested, my voice shaky, but Jake pressed on. "Just a little further. I swear I heard something over here." We crept deeper into the woods, the trees closing in around us. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. With each step, the howls grew louder, echoing in the night like a sinister warning. "Jake, I really think we should go back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just a few more minutes," he insisted, but I could see the fear creeping into his eyes too. Suddenly, the underbrush rustled violently, and a massive shadow lunged at us from the darkness. "Run!" I screamed, my instincts kicking in. We bolted back toward the cabin, our hearts racing as we stumbled over roots and branches. I could hear the creature behind us, its heavy breathing getting closer. "What the hell was that?" Sarah shouted, panic rising in her voice. "I don't know," I yelled back, adrenaline pumping through my veins. "Just keep running." We sprinted through the trees, branches whipping at our faces as we dashed back to the safety of the cabin. I could feel the cold sweat on my forehead and the burning in my legs as we finally reached the door. Jake fumbled with the lock, his hands shaking. Come on," he urged, finally managing to get it open. We all tumbled inside, slamming the door shut behind us. We leaned against the door, gasping for breath, the reality of what just happened sinking in. "What was that thing?" Sarah panted, her face pale. "I don't know," I replied, trying to catch my breath, but it felt huge. Jake's eyes were wide with fear. "We should have never gone out there. That was stupid." We huddled together in the dim light of the cabin, the howls still echoing in our minds. The fire crackled softly, but it did little to ease the tension in the room. "Do you think it's still out there?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "I hope not," I said, glancing at the window. The darkness outside felt alive, like it was watching us. We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind howling outside. Each gust felt like a reminder of the terror we had just experienced. The shadows danced on the walls, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was lurking just beyond our sight. After what felt like hours, the howling finally faded into the distance. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "Maybe it's gone," I said, trying to sound hopeful. "Let's just stay inside for the rest of the night," Jake suggested, his voice shaky. "Agreed," I said, and we settled back down, trying to calm our racing hearts. As the night wore on, we told ourselves it was just our imaginations running wild. But deep down, we all knew something was out there. The woods felt different now, like they were hiding secrets we weren't meant to uncover. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and we all fell asleep, though it was a restless sleep filled with nightmares. I kept dreaming of that shadow, the growl echoing in my ears, and every time I woke up, I was drenched in sweat. When morning finally came, the sun peeked through the trees, casting a warm glow over the cabin. I blinked against the light, feeling disoriented. "What time is it?" I mumbled, rubbing my eyes. Almost 8, Jake replied, yawning. I can't believe we actually survived the night. Sarah sat up, her hair a mess. Do you think it was real? Or did we just imagine it? I don't know, I said, looking out the window. The woods looked peaceful in the daylight, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread. But I don't want to find out. We decided to spend the day exploring the area, hoping to shake off the fear from the night before. But even as we hiked through the woods, I couldn't help but feel like we were being watched. Every rustle in the bushes made me jump, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see that massive shadow lurking behind us. We found a small stream and sat by it, trying to relax, but the tension hung in the air like a thick fog. Do you think we should tell anyone what happened? Sarah asked, throwing a pebble into the water. Who would believe us? Jake replied with a shrug. They'd think we were just trying to scare them. Yeah, but we can't just pretend it didn't happen, I said, feeling uneasy. What if it comes back? Let's just focus on having fun today, Jake suggested, trying to lighten the mood. We spent the day hiking, but the fear lingered in the back of my mind. Every time I heard a branch snap or the wind howling, my heart would race. I couldn't shake the feeling that we hadn't seen the last of that creature. As the sun began to set, we headed back to the cabin, the shadows growing longer and darker. I don't like this, Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. Me neither, I admitted. Let's just stay inside tonight. We settled in for another night, the fire crackling softly. But as darkness fell, the howling began again, echoing through the trees. What is that? Sarah asked, her eyes wide with fear. It's back, I said, my heart racing. We huddled together, listening to the howls growing closer. What do we do? Jake asked, panic rising in his voice. Just stay quiet, I whispered, trying to keep my own fear in check. The howls grew louder, and I could feel the tension in the air. It felt like the creature was circling us, waiting for the right moment to strike. Suddenly, there was a loud crash outside, and I jumped. What was that? I gasped. I don't know, Jake said, his voice shaking. We all held our breath, waiting for the next sound. The howling continued, but now it was mixed with something else. A low growl that sent chills down my spine. Run! I screamed, and we bolted for the door. We stumbled outside, the cold air hitting us like a slap in the face. The howling echoed around us, and I could feel the creature's presence closing in. Where do we go? Sarah shouted, panic in her voice. Back to the car, I yelled, and we sprinted toward the vehicle. As we ran, I could hear the growling getting closer, and I felt a surge of adrenaline. We reached the car, and I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking. Come on, I urged, finally getting the door open. We all piled inside, slamming the door shut behind us. I turned the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. Go, go, Jake shouted, and I hit the gas. We sped down the dirt road, the howling fading into the distance. I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see that massive shadow chasing us. What just happened? Sarah panted, her face pale. I don't know, I said, trying to catch my breath, but I'm never coming back here again. As we drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, lurking in the shadows of the woods. We never found out what it was, but we all agreed something was out there, and that was enough to keep us away from those woods for good. This story captures the chilling experience of encountering the unknown in the woods, filled with suspense and fear. Let me know if you need any adjustments or further details.